Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist podcast. I'm really excited today. We have a guest that is not an American-based therapist, so it's a totally interesting and different angle. I'm excited to bring this information to you guys. We've got Mieke, Vander, Heyden here with us today. Mieke, I'm so glad you're here. And I always start out the podcast and I just say, how did you go from becoming a traditional therapist to a traveling therapist? I'd love for you to share your story with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me today. So let me see. So first I was a traditional psychotherapist, but more like at the side. So it was like coordinating. I was working with young adults with cancer and their families. I loved the job. I had a relationship at that time that wasn't really working very well. And there were some power dynamics at job, and all of that was suddenly too overwhelming. I got burnt out. And then a colleague actually asked me, like, okay, what would you do if you would win the lottery? And I just started to cry in front of all my colleagues, which I found so embarrassing. But what came out was so surprising. It was like, I need distance. I need to travel. I need to get out of here. And it came from so deep. And I knew that that was my inner voice speaking to me. And that same week, I resigned and I started to prepare for 1 year sabbatical. I came back after a year. I had a really good time traveling, even though it was very fearful for me. First time solo traveling for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back like with the idea, okay, let's just continue again, right? Look for a job again, open my practice and so on. And I just felt like after a few weeks, like, no, this is actually not what I want to do. My life is starting right now. I started gifting things and all of that. I took distance of the place I was living in a way. And I booked a one-way ticket to Colombia. I had some things that I wanted to find out for myself. For example, I wanted to find out if training other therapists or social workers and so on in the creative art therapies would be something that I really like, or is it like a mental idea? So it's like, okay, let's see if somewhere I can do that on the way. Maybe I want to do this and that. Just wrote it down and I started my journey. And I just never got the impulse to go back so far.
I love that.
Yeah, like for visits from time to time, obviously. I love spending summertime in Europe. But in January, it's the 10th year that I will be doing this.
Amazing. I was going to say, how long have you been doing it? That's amazing. And just for the listeners, when you say I went back, you're talking about Belgium, right? Because originally you're from there, and that's where your job was that you really did love, but had to leave because of what you explained. Yeah. Okay. So you left Belgium, but booked a one-way ticket to Colombia, and then tried to come back, and where you tried to do like an in-person office, and then you were like, oh, I can't do this. This is like, and then you decided, no, this isn't for me. I've just got to I've got to go. Got to take
Exactly.
off.
Yeah. And in the beginning, I actually didn't work yet. I was more doing volunteers, traveling, see whatever comes my way. And it's only since a few years that I was like, okay, this is fun. I can continue the rest of my life like this, but the challenge is kind of gone. I think my next step is actually starting to work again with clients. And I already figured out, like, yes, that is something that I really enjoy, because I was second guessing everything when I was going through the burnout, right? And I was like, no, this is what I love. I had done some volunteerings here and there where I was giving workshops or retreats, working one-on-one here and there. So it's like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do. And I don't regret the choice, even though it has its challenges.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that story so much. And your type of therapy is a little less traditional too than maybe just a talk psychotherapist, right?
Exactly.
Can you share about that? It's just so interesting to me, like what you do, your modalities. In your bio, it talks about trance dance. I'd love to know what that is and what that means. Talk about that a little bit. And also the not licensure process, because there isn't even a licensure process necessarily in Belgium, right? It's different, the process over there. And, talk some around like, how does that translate to seeing clients in the rest of the world, and how do you manage all that? I know that's a lot put into one, but I want to cover all that if we can, and we have time today, because I just think your story is really interesting.
Awesome. Where do you want me to start?
So how about the modality? Like maybe you could tell us a little bit about it, because it's different. It's an alternative thing than maybe like your traditional talk therapist kind of role.
So I got trained in a 4-year integrative psychotherapy. training, right? And that is already quite holistic, which I love. That's why I chose it. And then I integrated also like creative art therapy, dance
Mm.
therapy, psychodrama, laughter yoga, the trance dance ritual, and also some constellation work. And
Wow.
like the integrative frame is very open, so it's kind of easy to hang other things in it. And I really believe in embodiment, in creativity, because when we speak, we always tell ourselves the same story, and then you go to a therapist and then you repeat yourselves. And I'm like, okay, my role as a therapist is like to cut those narratives or like to go a layer deeper. And I find that that is easy through dance and creativity, for example.
Oh, that's amazing. So the integrative school that you went to, I guess it was
Hmm.
more, I guess the curriculum, was it more focused on like integrative, like somatic and dance and alternative type
No,
therapies? Or is that something you brought in later just as you
exactly.
evolved as a therapist? I see.
Exactly. Yeah. The first 4 years training, it was more like humanistic. So it was and gestalt and systemic and contextual and psychodynamic, just to name some, right? But the creative ones that are the ones that I added in later.
What does your practice look like with that? Because I would imagine some of that would like the yoga and all that would be better like in the room with somebody, but obviously you're traveling and you're probably doing it over
Hmm.
telehealth, I would think over video. I'm just curious, like
Exactly.
how do you manage that? How do you make it work? Because I get that question all the time. Like even EMDR therapists, they're like, I don't think I could do it
Uh-huh.
like on video. And I'm like, you totally can. You just have to be creative with how you do it. So I'm curious, how do you do that? How do you work those modalities into like telehealth?
Almost the same way.
Mhm.
I will ask I will ask the participants, the client, sorry, just to have their screen in a certain way so I can see or the feet or I can see their whole body or just the face or or like
Nice.
when I'm doing psychodrama, it's like a lot of chair work, like taking in different
Mm.
positions. So I will ask, like, put the chair next to you, and then I see them moving from one chair to the other chair. So I really want to be able to see them and see what's going on. So as if I am in there with them in the room. Sometimes I will dance with them. It really
I love that.
depends.
So what is a trance dance? I'm just so curious about that part of it. When I read your bio, I was like, I want to
Yes.
know all about the trance dance.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love it. So that is a neo-shamanistic ritual, actually, where
Hmm.
breathwork is combined with a certain kind of music and also with movement. And we use a bandana, so it's like blindfolded. And all of that is like to create a condition so you can actually go into a trance. And then for some people, it can actually be a very spiritual inner journey. But for other people, it can be very emotional or it can be very like bodily, physical, right? Because with the bandana, you you lose control.
Yeah, like it takes away your senses, I guess.
So you're totally on your own. You're not even dancing to be seen by someone, right? It's just like
Mhm.
you and yourself. It can go really, really deep.
That's so interesting. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go research it some.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you ever worry about doing that deep work on like video, like worry about the internet cutting out and the client? I've never had that happen, but I've heard people talk about like I'm scared to do that type of work because what if I lose the
I understand.
connection and they're just like stuck in, like I'm a hypnotherapist too. Like what if they're stuck in trance? You know, have you ever
Yeah.
had that or even worry about it?
I had it, but I don't like me worrying about it's not gonna solve the problem, right? And
Totally.
it's so rare that it happens. And obviously, people at the other side they know that that can happen. That can be part of it, and they integrate it in the therapy session as well. Like, okay, what did that bring up for you?
I love that. How does your like referral process work? Like in the US, we
Hmm.
always see our clients back in our state of licensure usually, but there are therapists in the US that see expats and that sort of thing. And I know, getting your degree or certification in Belgium is probably a totally different process. I'd love to hear about the process just in case anybody's listening or even wants to become an expat and go live in Belgium and get credentialed or go through the same process you did. What
Hmm.
does that process look like? Mhm.
I always, when I hear about the states, I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on there?
Yeah, us
Like
too.
you cannot move as a therapist,
I
so many
know.
rules. Yeah, so in Belgium, to become a psychotherapist, then you actually did a training. It's not necessarily in university. I did it in a private school, a
Ah,
private organization. And then you pass exams and tests and all of that. It's quite strict. And then you are a psychotherapist. And then you can choose to, how to say, to connect to a certain organ, like the association of this kind of therapist or whatever. And then they have some criteria like, okay, we want you to do some supervision. We want you to continue studying and so on. But it really depends, like, what is your basic degree in psychotherapy? Like, are you Gestalt, are you systemic? And then you have some
mm,
options, but you don't have to do that. It's like totally by choice.
wow.
So how do I get my people, like
Hmm.
my
Yeah.
clients? Most of them I get through, like the ones from Belgium still.
Oh,
I do
okay.
those through directories. That is what works the best, honestly. And
Nice.
then the international ones, more like the nomads, the expats, that's through social media or people referring to me because I'm also living abroad. So people get to know me. So that's more fluid, let's say, in a different way.
Yeah. It's not very clear cut, I guess. Like there's not any regulations that says you can't see a client that lives in Colombia and then in Belgium and then Mexico or whatever. Like it's totally open as far as your life, not your, I keep saying licensing more because I'm so used to that
Mm-hmm.
language, but as far as your credentials in Belgium and all that, there's no
Mm-hmm.
restrictions around where the client needs to be or where you need to be able to see whoever you want to see, basically.
Never heard of it, honestly.
Okay.
No. I think like clinical psychologists, they have more severe rules. That is like more strict. Yeah.
Wow.
We're
That's
something in
awesome.
between like a clinical psychologist and a coach. Coach is not regulated at all. Psychotherapy is, but
Hmm.
still quite flexible. Yeah.
I gotcha. So it's almost more of a mindset of like a coach in a way. You have like training, you've taken a test to give you a credential, I guess, and then
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through some supervision if you choose to. Not everybody has, I guess. But for example, if somebody were listening to this and they wanted to work with you in the
Mm-hmm.
somebody in the United States, they could just ring you up and just work with you as a coach and probably just do a private pay and it wouldn't
Exactly.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I actually work with people from Canada, the States, and so on. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Because, something that always comes up for therapists, it's like, we have to see clients that are physically sitting in our state of licensure. So, me as a therapist that is sitting in a different state or different country all the time, I wouldn't be able to see a therapist in the United States unless they were like credentialed in every single state that I'm sitting in or licensed in every single state I'm sitting in at
Yeah.
the time of the session. So people ask all the time, like, how do I even find a therapist as a digital nomad? And I always talk about people like you in your situation. It's like, get on an international directory and find a therapist in another country that speaks English, does the
Mm-hmm.
modality you want to do, and see them that way. It might be private pay, but, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Before we hit record, you also kind of mentioned that there is an insurance, I guess, that you would provide we call them super bills in the United States, but like a receipt for your services that they might be able to get reimbursed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it clients in Europe or different countries or?
I think it really depends of the insurance. If people ask me to give them an invoice and with a small description, therapy, couples counseling, whatever, coaching, then that's what I make. And then like I know some of them, some American expats living in Tunisia, teaching there, they're able to do that for the moment. I don't know which
Oh,
insurance it is, but it really depends.
so you as the clinician, you're not too concerned about like what the insurance is and if it'll even cover me. You just give the receipt and then it's up to the client to
Mm-hmm.
decide if it gets
Yeah,
reimbursed or not. Yeah, that's smart.
exactly. Yeah, I usually recommend to figure that out beforehand.
How do you manage, like, let's say you have a client in Africa and Belgium and Mexico and Colombia, like, how do you manage time zones? Do you have a system or any tips for people? Because I would imagine that could be like
Hmm.
kind of a nightmare
Yeah.
or not. I don't know. How
Uh,
is that for
that's
you?
it's not so bad actually. It works quite well for me being in Latin America and working with Europe, for example, or Africa, because when they stop working, that's usually when they want therapy, right? In their evenings. And for me, that's the start of my day. So I love
Mm.
that. What is less convenient is when I go for a few months to Europe, then I'm like working all my nights and I'm like, why am I actually here? I don't really get to enjoy my stay here.
That's so funny. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's a big question. It's like, all right, I've got the schedule set for, these time differences, but what if I actually want to go into a different time zone? Then like, do I
Hmm.
rearrange all my clients or do I just like suck it up and, work overnight, middle of the night or
Yeah.
whatever to see these
Yeah.
clients?
Well, the middle of the night I never have done. I think
Oh, that's
maximum
good.
9 o'clock or something at night. Yeah. Which is reasonable, I think. It's okay. If it's not every night, like I would limit it to
Yeah.
2 nights a week.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, I
Mhm.
mean, some therapists will like tell their clients ahead of time. So they'll be like, hey, for 3 months, I'm going to be in this time zone. So we're going to have to move your appointments
Mhm.
to accommodate my schedule. Am I going to just, as the clinician, decide I'm just going to shift my entire schedule? It's hard. I feel like it's
Yeah,
hard to adapt if you're switching around, but it's also
it's
hard on your
true.
clients. So,
Exactly. I think they have the right, how to say, it's my choice to travel, right? So I feel like I'm the
mm.
one who actually will adapt to them.
Yeah, I love hearing that perspective. There's so many different like philosophies on it.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, and if it's
Yeah,
not too hard on you, like
exactly.
we move every couple of weeks to a different place, but it's usually the same
Oh,
time zone. So it's not,
okay.
yeah, you're like, oof. So it's not too hard on me, but I could imagine if I was moving like, Europe to Africa to the United States to Latin America, like constantly, it would be really tough. I think on the
Hmm.
clinician and the client to have to like adapt
Yeah, totally.
constantly. I'm glad to hear how you do it. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it reinforces you don't want to be in Europe, I guess. You're like you're like,
Yeah.
"I gotta get back to Colombia," or wherever. You're at Colombia, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm now the last week in Colombia, next week to Mexico. Yeah.
That's amazing. So how often do you switch places?
I try to stay in one place about 3, 4 months because I feel I need some stability. In the beginning, when I didn't work, I was like going at a faster pace, but like also having a business, I need to feel centered and grounded. And I feel like one place is really helping me with that.
I'm finding that too. The more we move, it's just like last time we moved to this place, it was like, I'm exhausted. I just
Hmm.
need to sit somewhere for like a month and just chill? So how do you know when it's time to go? Is it do you preset it like, okay, 3 months, or is it like just when I feel ready, I'm just gonna leave and go somewhere else kind of thing?
It kind of depends. In some parts, there's like maximum 3 months, for
Oh,
example,
visa,
uh,
visa.
visa things. And like in Mexico, I can like stay until whenever. So there it's really like feeling when do I feel like going somewhere else. If there's something else calling me somewhere, then I will just go. So it's kind of depending on the destination, I guess.
And are you still doing this all solo or do you travel with a partner or anything? Or is it just
No, solo. Yeah.
solo?
Yeah.
Wow. And I guess, do you have like friends in each location or is it kind of just, you just pop somewhere and just make a life for yourself there and then,
Usually, like the last years, it's more like I tend to go back to places where I already have been, where I have a small community with friends, because I really love going back where I already know some people. It's like still
yeah,
finding a kind of a home, even though I'm on the road and moving.
for sure. That's so cool. So I'm trying to think, is there anything, you know, that maybe I haven't asked you about, or you think that you've had to learn and adapt to this lifestyle that might be helpful for people to know about, like Wi-Fi or like meeting friends
Hmm.
or anything like that that might be helpful tip or trick that you've
Hmm.
picked up along the way?
Well, I think I feel easily and fast at home and I make fast friends because I think it's because I learned the language quite fast. And to do that,
Oh,
I started immersing myself. I was 9 months somewhere, being the only tourist, and that really helped
wow.
me. And now it's so easy. And I see the difference with people who still don't have the language, right? And they're struggling much more.
So immerse yourself in the language. How do you
Mhm.
do that? Like, what's your tips for that? Is it just hanging out with locals or?
It's part of it. So I knew that that was what I wanted to do, like really learn the language first as a priority. So when I went to Colombia, I looked for a volunteering place and it was kind of not in the middle of nowhere, but like where there are not so many tourists, right? And then I went to live in with a family. I rented
Oh,
a room there and they only spoke Spanish. And then I took like a few Spanish classes, just like, okay, explain me the verbs, like the
Yeah.
present tense, past tense, future tense, and then I can figure it out myself. And then was just like practicing with the people I was working with, people I was training. I started to train psychologists in creative art therapy after 3 weeks. So I had to, and that is the
Wow.
thing, like immerse yourself. So you have to learn it. There's no other choice.
That is incredible. So you purposefully put yourself in that situation that
Yes.
forced you to learn the language. That's amazing to me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so brave.
Yeah, I didn't really think about, for me, it was like very logical because I learned other languages and I found out that that is the fastest way.
Yeah, I guess because I guess English isn't your first language, right? Being from
Yeah.
Belgium.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. So in Colombia, I guess it's Spanish, right? In Colombia.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So you're learning Spanish, you're immersed with this family that only speaks Spanish. You got hired for a job, I guess, to teach that, or you just went to Colombia and
Was a
it looked like
volunteer.
it was volunteer. Oh, it was volunteer.
Yeah.
How'd you find out about that opportunity? Just searching around or?
It was connecting with people through the internet, and then they referred me to that organization. And I went on a call. I almost didn't know anything of Spanish, and we managed to have the call. And they said, "Yes, you can come." I was like, "All right."
Wow, that's incredible. That's what led you to Colombia in the first place, or you were already planning on going? And
No, I actually looked at the map and I was like, "Okay, what is calling me?" It's like Colombia. I like the name. I don't know anything about it. And then I started
wow,
looking for, like, an opening for the visa, because as a volunteer you get a volunteering visa, which gives you a bit more freedom, because I could stay 1 or 2 years in one go. And the doors were opening, because then I also tried a little bit like the countries around, and doors were just not opening at all. So it's like, okay, Colombia, it really is.
wow. I love that story. That's so cool. I hope that inspires somebody listening. Just look at a
Hmm.
map and see what calls to you and go.
Like
That's
you have the freedom
incredible.
to leave when it's not fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. How long is the visa in Colombia? How long can somebody stay? Or I wonder if it's different for somebody
Hmm.
from Belgium than somebody from the US or
So what I've heard, it's 3 months and you can extend it once.
oh nice. For like another
Yeah,
3 or
exactly. Yeah.
wow. I wonder
Hmm.
if it's a hard process to extend the visa. I never
Not so much. It's something that you just do online, and then you
oh.
you pay.
Yeah, you pay. That's how it was
Yes.
when we were in the Dominican Republic. Like they were just like, we
Hmm.
don't care if you stay, really, you just have to pay when you leave for the extra days.
Hmm.
And I think if
Yeah.
you stayed over like, I think it was like maybe 9 months, then you had to like start giving a percentage of your income to the
Okay.
Dominican Republic. So we were like, okay, we better leave before we hit that date.
Yes, I understand.
Anyway, I'm always so curious about how all that works for people. That's amazing. You're so brave and adventurous to just go and do that. It really an inspiration. Thanks for sharing that. I hope it inspires somebody
No.
else to do something similar.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to work with you and what you do and
Hmm.
all of that, and how would they get a hold of you? Where would they find you?
Hmm. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, on my website, and it's called Moving Hearts Therapy.
Oh,
Yeah, or also email. It's like, what is it? info@movingheartstherapy.com. Exactly.
love that. Oh, how wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to come talk to us and share your
No,
story. It's
with pleasure.
super inspirational.